Happy Tuesday. Today is Tuesday, November the 22nd, 2022. Today's daily Bible readings come to us from Psalm 117, Jeremiah 30, 18 through 24, Revelation 22, 8 through 21. Or you could have read Psalm 24, Isaiah 33, 17 through 22, and then Revelation 22, 8 through 21 again. And I'm going to take a look at, excuse me, Isaiah 33 today and kind of reference the section from Revelation, kind of, sort of, not really, not specifically. But I want to talk about Isaiah, and I want to talk about oxymorons. And no, I'm not talking about stupid cows, and you shouldn't call them stupid. They're cows. They can't help what they don't understand. So an oxymoron is a combination of words that basically they don't go together. They shouldn't make sense together, but they do, and we use them all the time. They're words that contradict each other. So, for instance, if people say, "Oh, that ice cream was awfully good," how can something be awful and awfully good? Talk about civil war. So war, and yet we're all very civil with each other. The silent scream, right? And then, of course, the one that everybody likes to pick on, military intelligence, and I'll just leave that where it is. So, yeah, but they make a point. We understand what they say, and sometimes it's really powerful imagery. And here we have in Isaiah this oxymoron, to my opinion and my way of thinking, of the immovable tent, which tents are supposed to be movable. They're portable. That's why they're tents, right? That's why we don't, they're not permanent structures, right? They're held down with ropes that are tied to tent pegs. It's a movable thing, right? So here you have the immovable tent. It's using this oxymoron as a sign of hope. And it's the hope for a peaceful future, right? Isaiah is addressing a people who have faced war and invasion and uprooting, and they have, like their ancestors before them, been forced back in a very real way into wandering once again, right? Their wandering ancestors, for them, the tent was a way of life. Those were their homes. It was a reality of who they were and where they were. And it was a reminder of the promised land that they had turned their backs on. So I'm not really talking so much about, as they left Egypt and got to the mountain. That was a pretty short chunk of their life in the wilderness. What I'm talking about is when they finally relatively quickly get to the promised land, and they don't have the faith in God, and they don't trust God enough to go in and take the land that he's giving them. And understandably, he loses his cool and says, "Okay, great. None of you are going to enter this land. I'm going to wait until y'all are gone, and your children will get to go into the land," right? And so for them, it's a reminder. Their wilderness wanderings for 40 years in the desert because God wouldn't allow them in, living in tents, was, I would have to say, a reminder of where they could have been. So even when they were settled, though, finally in the land, they worshipped God in a tabernacle. Right? God's house is a tent. And it was a fancy tent. Don't get me wrong, as tents goes, it was really, really nice. Like, they didn't go to Walmart and buy like the off-brand of Coleman tent. They went to like REI and bought the really super slick, shiny tent. The one that like all the cool kids are using. So it was a fancy tent, but it. And when they got into the land, albeit it moved less than it did when they were on their wilderness journeys, but it still moved around the land in their midst. That was, the whole point of it. It wasn't until generations after they had finally entered the land that God's dwelling became a permanent structure in Jerusalem, right? This is the temple that Solomon built, the temple that David had, like, not literally laid the foundations for, but started collecting all the stuff you need to build a proper temple. And then he wasn't in a tent anymore. He was in a permanent dwelling. So, the future, this becomes like the future hope of Israel here in this text in Isaiah. It's a it's the hope of Zion, and it's symbolized in this immovable tent. It's a call back to their wandering ancestors, but it's also a promise that the presence of God's presence, right, will never again be taken from them, or perhaps more importantly, they won't be taken from Him. So, anyway, that's the DVR for today. Get out, enjoy the day, and I'll see you tomorrow. Boop.